Okay, we need to talk about Mitch McConnell because what actually really happened is a lot more serious than was initially reported. And let's be honest, this is actually not a story about one single senator anymore. This is a story about how broken our system is, especially when it comes to people like this getting this old, this unwell, and holding this much power with zero accountability. So let's get into it. Here's what we actually know on record publicly. On the morning of June 14th, paramedics were rushed to an address in Washington, D.C. that matched the home address of Mitch McConnell. Police scanner audio, which multiple outlets have now reported on, including TMZ, and I want to say, Miss Thing, TMZ getting to politics was not on my 2026 bingo card, but then again, neither was me being a full-time political commentator. The audio describes an unconscious person in cardiac arrest receiving CPR. Let me say that again slowly. Cardiac arrest, unconscious, receiving CPR.
Paramedic engine 3, medic 3, ALS response unconscious.
Medic 3 communications. East Army supervisor, CPR in progress.
Okay. Now, in the interest of being completely straight and forward with you, which is the entire point of this channel, the dispatch and the audio did not explicitly state his name, but baby, come on, let's put the pieces of the puzzle together. We got this man who can barely stand up, his address, cardiac arrest. Baby, I'm not doing this with you. I don't want to pretend that the detail of not naming him doesn't exist. And the fact that this lines up with his hospitalization that very same day, it's a lot more serious than he just wasn't feeling well, which is what his office led us to believe on that very first day. He was admitted to the hospital that morning, and as of reporting today in this video, he has been there for 3 weeks. Girl, I don't feel good. I'm in the hospital for 3 weeks. Please, Jesus. And here's where it gets really infuriating to me, no matter what party you're for. And I think people are really starting to see that we're not just red and blue anymore. For 3 weeks, his office has given us nothing, if not just minimal answers. The most detailed statement that we have gotten says that he is continuing to improve and is working closely with his staff on Kentucky and Senate matters. That's it. No diagnosis, no explanation of what actually happened that morning, no timeline for when he'll be back, absolutely nothing. We are being given nothing about a sitting senator in the United States Senate. Meanwhile, baby, as of July 7th, 2026, Republican colleagues have started going on record saying that they're having 20-minute phone calls with this man, saying things like, I talked to him, he sounded good. That's not transparency, that's a PR strategy. And there's a real difference between the senator is recovering and there's a big difference between the senator is recovering, here's what actually happened, and I spoke to him on the phone, he seems just fine. Girl, these people think that we are baby. I also want to be real for 5 fucking seconds. This man is barely able to speak, stand, walk. You want me to believe that after being in the hospital for 3 weeks, he laid up in a hospital bed and spoke to Scott Jennings, which is a whole nother beast we could get into, about politics, Iran, fucking, I just can't, girl. They really believe that we are not able to think for ourselves. Scott Jennings is a beast of another topic that we can cover on another day, but I want to show a clip of what happened yesterday when Scott Jennings was asked about his phone call with Mitch and asked if he could call him again.
Do you think he'd be willing to call into the show? Could we get him on the phone now?
You know, I wasn't really expecting him to call this morning, to be honest. So when the phone rang and I was able to talk to him, I was frankly pretty grateful. I mean, as I said, I've known him since I was a teenager. If it hadn't been for Mitch McConnell and the McConnell Center at the University of Louisville, you know, I would never have been able to go to college. He's been my mentor and he changed the trajectory of my life. So, you know, when things happen to him and happen to people in your life that you really care about, you know, you just sort of naturally feel extremely worried. So when I heard his voice today and he was clearly keeping up with stuff, that made me happy to hear from him, because like everybody else, I've been, you know, somewhat in the dark about it. But to hear him talking and to know that he's also talking to the Senate leadership it made me.
And look, baby, this is not a one-time scare. This is a pattern, and I want to walk you through it because when you lay it all out together, it stops looking like bad luck and looks like a bunch of situations that should have triggered very serious consequences and conversations many years ago. Mitch McConnell is 84 years old. He is a childhood polio survivor, and he has dealt with documented, very real health events for many years now. Let's go back to 2023. He froze mid-sentence at a press conference, just stopped talking, stared into fucking space, and had to be walked through the rest of it by his aide. Now, following that, his office said that he felt lightheaded. A month later, nearly the exact same thing happened to him at an event in Kentucky. He could not answer a question for over 30 seconds before someone stepped in. That is the moment we should have taken action. I want to be very clear on my stance here. This man and people in his situation on the left and the right, male and female, should not be making decisions that affect women and children's lives. There are women dying across the country because of votes that this man has been able to have his hand in. He's had multiple falls, honey. He had a concussion and broken ribs after one fall in 2023, sprained wrist and a cut to his face after a fall in 2024, and reportedly another fall that was near the Senate chambers in 2025 that was attributed to his long-term effects of childhood polio. That is one per year, 23, 24, 25, that we know of. Baby Humpty Dumpty has fallen and cracked. It is time to put him in the garbage disposal. In February of this year, he was hospitalized for what his office said were flu-like symptoms. That hospitalization lasted a full week. And by April, reporters were stating when they were on the grounds at the Senate that he was being pushed around in a wheelchair by aides. That is not one bad health scare. That is not bad luck. That is years of documented issues. Things we have seen on television, on the internet. That is years of decline while this person holds one of the most powerful seats in the US Senate. Now here's why I want to actually make this video, because it is much bigger than Mitch McConnell. He's not the only one. He hasn't been, and he's not currently. This is a Congress-wide problem. It happens on both sides of the aisle. And I want to be very clear about that because I don't want this to seem like I'm doing a dunk on Republicans. We'll be doing enough of that. I promise you that. This is not a red or blue problem. This is an age and accountability problem. I want you to think about Dianne Feinstein. She was a Democrat who in her final years showed visible signs of cognitive decline in public, including moments where she seemed visibly confused about votes that she had just cast. And colleagues admitted privately for months that she was unable to do the job that she was doing the way she had used to do it. But nobody forced the issue until it became a full-blown scandal. Why must we get to that point? I want to talk about what happened with Joe Biden in the summer of 2024. A debate performance so alarming that it triggered his own party to rally and turn against him. This happened to force him out of the race for re-election after years of his administration and the people that we are supposed to trust telling us that he was fine the entire time. Think about Chuck Grassley, still serving in his 90s. Think about how many members of Congress are in their 70s and 80s right now. And I want to let you know this is happening at a rate that has exploded compared to just 20 years ago. These people don't represent the now, they represent the past. I want you to think about the person sitting at the head of this country right now, the man that we call president, that holds the nuclear codes. Bruised hands, slurring, up at all hours of the day and night, nothing making sense, rambling. Baby, this man has dementia. And if this was Joe Biden or Barack Obama, he would have been impeached and removed time and time again by now. This is the problem. We have built a system with no rules for any of this. No mandatory retirement age, no cognitive health requirements. The president is telling us over and over that he's having these tests done. Baby, we know you know what an elephant is. I want to know that you are mentally fit to serve this country. And I do not believe you are. No independent medical reviews are necessary. Nothing. The only thing that removes someone is an election, resignation, or death. And we've watched over and over again as elected officials and their teams have high decline from us, the Americans, over and over again until it gets bad enough that they have to talk. So here's what I think needs to happen, and this for both parties, not just the one that's in the headlines currently. There need to be term limits. everywhere. Not because every long-serving person is bad at their job. Some of the most experienced people in our government have been there for decades, but because power for 30, 40, 50 years starts to look less like public service and more like a permanent ruling class that never has to answer to anyone. We need age limits, or at minimum, mandatory independent health reviews for anyone that is serving past a certain age. Call me ageist, I don't care. These need to be made public. Every page, no redactions. And this needs to happen in the same way that commercial airline pilots have to have a retirement age, because at a certain point, the public decided that they are just too old to be doing that job. And we need actual transparency laws, meaning if an elected official is hospitalized, like now for 3 weeks, their office cannot just give us bullshit answers and run the clock. The public that elected these people is entitled to information about their well-being. And by the way, this is exactly why the Kentucky part of this matters so much. Back in 2024, Kentucky's Republican legislation changed the law so that if McConnell's seat is given up, it is not immediately taken by the governor, who happens to be Democratic. Instead, it will trigger a special election. McConnell himself has praised this change, and Republicans in Kentucky insist that it wasn't specifically about him. You can draw your own conclusions about that timing. I know that I have. But notice what it tells you. Even the people around him were thinking about what's coming sooner than later when he can't continue, while his own office was still publicly stating he was doing fine. That gap right there is the whole problem. Here's my honest read, and I want to be very fair about this. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not going to sit here and diagnose a man that I've never met. But I truly do believe that this man is gone. Rather, he is physically still on this earth. I think we are dealing with a vegetable who is being kept alive by machines. I think that he is brain dead and selfishly being kept going because the seat that he holds such a space in this narrow Senate majority. And that is the sick truth. But separate from him personally, I'm going to say that the system that allows this to happen over and over again on both sides with no transparency is fundamentally broken. This isn't about being cruel to an 84-year-old man, because I do that to an 80-year-old named Donald Trump every day. It's about asking, why do we accept a standard for our elected officials that we would never accept from a pilot, a surgeon, or honestly, any regular job? If you can't safely and with transparency do your job, there should be a mechanism that doesn't rely on the person or their staff to volunteer that information. That's the conversation I want to actually come from this video. It's not just, is Mitch McConnell okay? But why does our system make it this easy to hide things involving the most powerful people in this country? I'll keep you posted as we learn more about his condition, but I really want to know in the comments what you think about term limits, laws, and things like that. I promise you, this is not going away as an issue on either side. Subscribe if you want to continue hearing these conversations, because we are just getting started, and make sure you hit the notification bell as well to be notified when we do new videos each and every week.